Adrian Lambert stood before the full-length mirror in his private suite at the St. Regis, New York, adjusting his platinum cufflinks for the 7th time in 10 minutes. The pristine white shirt felt too tight around his neck. Despite the perfect tailoring of his Tom Ford tuxedo, everything had to be flawless today. It was, after all, just another business transaction. The most important transaction of your life, his mind whispered traitorously. At 28, Adrian had orchestrated countless multi-billion-dollar deals, earned a reputation as Wall Street's most ruthless young CEO, and built an empire that made even his father proud. But nothing in his vast experience had prepared him for what awaited him downstairs, a bride he had never met. 10 minutes, sir, his assistant called through the door. Adrian's fingers trembled slightly as he straightened his bow tie. He caught the motion in the mirror and immediately clenched his fist, forcing the weakness away. Lambert men didn't show weakness. His father had taught him that lesson early and often. The arrangement made perfect sense on paper. The merger between Lambert Industries and Moreau Global would create the largest technology conglomerate in North America. The marriage to Eliza Moreau was simply the cherry on top, a gesture of good faith between two powerful families. Adrian had agreed to it without hesitation, just as he'd agreed to every other strategic move that advanced his position in the business world. So why couldn't he stop his heart from hammering against his ribs? A knock at the door preceded his father's entrance. Philip Lambert strode in, every silver hair perfectly in place, his presence immediately filling the room. Everything in order? Yes, sir. Adrian's response was automatic, ingrained after years of careful conditioning. His father's steel-gray eyes assessed him with the same calculated precision he used in boardroom negotiations. Remember, son, this union is about more than just you and the Moreau girl. Our shareholders expect a united front and steady leadership transition, I know. Adrian kept his voice level, professional. It was easier to treat this like any other merger acquisition. Philip nodded, apparently satisfied. Good. Though, I must say you're getting the better end of this deal. I've seen Eliza at several charity functions. He paused, searching for an appropriate word. An acceptable choice for a Lambert. High praise, coming from his father. Adrian had deliberately avoided looking up photos of his bride-to-be, treating her like any other asset in a portfolio. It made things simpler, cleaner. But now, standing minutes away from their first meeting, curiosity gnawed at him. 5 minutes, Mr. Lambert, his assistant called again. His father straightened Adrian's already perfect tie. One last thing. The press will be watching every move today. The market opens tomorrow, and this merger needs to inspire confidence. Whatever you do, don't show weakness, Adrian finished. I remember. Left alone again, Adrian drew in a deep breath. He'd mastered the art of control early in life, building walls so high and thick that no one had ever managed to scale them. Physical intimacy? That was a vulnerability he couldn't afford. Relationships were messy, complicated things that interfered with the clean lines of business success. His virgin status wasn't something that bothered him. Most days he barely thought about it. Sex was just another distraction, like the parties and social events he avoided. But now, facing a marriage and the expectations that came with it, Adrian pushed the thought away. He'd deal with that particular challenge when it arose. For now, he had a ceremony to get through. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis had been transformed into a winter wonderland, despite the warm May afternoon. Outside, white orchids cascaded from crystal chandeliers, their delicate petals catching the light like freshly fallen snow. 300 of New York's elite filled the gilded chairs, their combined net worth probably exceeding the GDP of several small nations. Adrian took his place at the altar, back straight, expression carefully neutral. The string quartet began to play, and the massive doors at the end of the aisle swung open, and there she was. Later, Adrian would struggle to remember how to breathe. Eliza Moreau floated down the aisle like a dream he'd never dared to have. Her dress, a masterpiece of silk and lace, hugged curves that sent his carefully ordered world spinning off its axis. But it was her face that shattered every wall he'd ever built. Intelligence burned in those deep amber eyes, along with something else. A hint of defiance, perhaps. Her full lips held the ghost of a smile that suggested she knew secrets the rest of the world couldn't imagine. Dark curls framed her face, a few rebellious strands escaping the elegant updo to brush against her neck. She was exquisite. She was terrifying. Adrian felt his pulse quicken, his palms grow damp. This wasn't part of the plan. He wasn't supposed to feel this instant, overwhelming attraction. This wasn't just about the physical beauty, though God knew she had plenty of that. There was something in the way she carried herself, a quiet strength that called to something deep inside him. Their eyes met, and for a moment the rest of the world fell away. Adrian saw a flicker of surprise cross her features, quickly masked. Did she feel it too, this unexpected current of electricity? Her father placed her hand in his, and Adrian nearly flinched at the contact. Her skin was soft, warm, alive against his palm. How was he supposed to maintain his legendary control when every nerve ending in his body had suddenly come alive? The minister began to speak, but Adrian barely heard the words. He was too busy trying to remember how to breathe normally, how to keep his face composed while his internal world crumbled. Eliza's thumb brushed against his hand. An accident? A nervous twitch? And he had to bite back a gasp. They exchanged rings and vows, words they'd never chosen floating between them like autumn leaves. Adrian heard his own voice, steady despite the chaos in his mind, promising to love and cherish this stranger who had somehow already begun to crack his perfect facade. You may kiss the bride. Adrian's heart stopped. He'd known this moment was coming, had prepared for it like every other aspect of the ceremony. A brief, chaste kiss, that was the plan. But as he leaned in, Eliza's eyes met his again, and he saw something that made his breath catch. Vulnerability, matching his own. Their lips met, and Adrian's world exploded into color. Her mouth was soft, yielding yet somehow demanding, and he had to force himself to keep the kiss appropriate for their audience. When they parted, he saw a flush had crept into her cheeks, and her eyes were wide with what looked like surprise. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. They processed, down the aisle, posed for photographs, accepted congratulations from hundreds of guests whose names Adrian suddenly couldn't remember. Through it all, one thought kept circling in his mind. How was he going to survive being married to this woman, without revealing just how completely unprepared he was for everything that lay ahead? As they took their places for the first dance, Eliza's hand came to rest on his shoulder. "Relax," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. "You look like you're facing a firing squad instead of your new wife." Adrian stiffened, then forced himself to smile. "I apologize if I'm not meeting expectations." Interesting choice of words. Her eyes searched his face. "Tell me, Mr. Lambert, do you approach everything in life like a business transaction?" "If you only knew," he thought. But aloud he said, "It served me well so far." She made a non-committal sound as they turned across the floor. "We'll have to see about that, won't we?" The hint of challenge in her voice sent a shiver down his spine. This woman was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with business or power. She made him want things he'd never allowed himself to consider. As the dance ended, Eliza's fingers trailed down his arm, leaving fire in their wake. "I hope you're ready for this partnership, Adrian," she murmured. "Something tells me it's going to be unlike any deal you've ever made." Looking into her knowing eyes, Adrian realized he was in serious trouble. For the first time in his life, he was completely, utterly out of his depth. And the most terrifying part was, he wasn't sure he wanted to find his way back to solid ground. Eliza Moreau-Lambert stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse suite, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline as sunset painted the glass towers in shades of gold and pink. The presidential suite at the St. Regis was meant to be their home for the next 2 weeks before they moved into Adrian's penthouse apartment. Their honeymoon, though she used the term loosely, would be spent in New York due to Adrian's insistence on remaining close to the office during the merger transition. Behind her, she heard the subtle click of the suite's door, followed by the familiar sound of her new husband's measured footsteps. Even his walk was controlled, she mused. Everything about Adrian Lambert seemed calculated, precise, except for that kiss at the altar. For a brief moment, she'd glimpsed something raw and real beneath his perfect exterior. The Hong Kong markets just closed. Adrian's voice carried across the room. The merger announcement exceeded expectations. Both stocks are up 12%. Eliza turned, taking in his appearance. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, but otherwise looked as immaculate as he had during the ceremony. Is that your way of telling me our marriage is already profitable? A flicker of something, uncertainty, crossed his face, before disappearing behind his usual mask of control. I thought you'd want to know. What I'd like to know. She moved away from the window, bare feet silent on the plush carpet. Is why my husband spent 3 hours on business calls during our wedding reception. Adrian's jaw tightened. The merger is done. The papers are signed. The stocks are up. She stopped a few feet from him, close enough to see the subtle tension in his shoulders. At some point, Adrian, you're going to have to face the fact that this isn't just another business transaction. Isn't it? His voice was soft, dangerous. We both knew what this was when we agreed to it. A strategic alliance between our families. That requires us to actually build a life together, she interrupted. Unless you plan to live the next 50 years treating me like a particularly valuable asset in your portfolio? His green eyes darkened. You're oversimplifying. Am I? Then prove it. She closed the distance between them, watching his breathing quicken ever so slightly. Have dinner with me. No phones, no business talk, just two people getting to know each other. Adrian's hands clenched at his sides. I have calls scheduled. Cancel them. Eliza, cancel them. She reached up, straightening his tie in a gesture that was both intimate and challenging. Unless you're afraid of spending time alone with your wife? His pulse jumped, visibly in his throat. I'm not afraid of anything. Liar, she whispered, letting her fingers trail down his chest before stepping back. But that's okay. We all have our secrets, don't we? Something vulnerable flashed across his face before he could hide it. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm going to change for dinner. I suggest you do the same. She moved toward the bedroom, pausing at the door. Oh, and Adrian? If you even think about bringing your phone to the table, I'll throw it in the champagne bucket. Alone in the massive bedroom, Eliza let out a shaky breath. Playing with fire, that's what she was doing. But something about Adrian's carefully maintained control made her want to push, to discover what lay beneath all those perfect walls he'd built. The walk-in closet held her carefully selected honeymoon wardrobe. She chose a simple black dress that hugged her curves without being obvious about it. Let him squirm a little. Maybe it would crack that impossible composure of his. When she emerged 30 minutes later, she found the main room transformed. The lights had been dimmed and the small dining table was set for an intimate dinner for two. Adrian stood by the window, his tuxedo exchanged for charcoal slacks and a crisp white shirt. No phone in sight. I'm impressed, she said, watching him turn. The look in his eyes as he took in her appearance sent a shiver down her spine. I do occasionally listen, he replied, moving to pull out her chair. The next hour passed in a dance of careful questions and measured responses. Adrian asked about her work as a literature professor, seeming genuinely interested in her theories about modern American fiction. She learned about his early years at Lambert Industries, working his way up despite his family name, determined to prove himself on merit alone. Your father must be proud, she observed, watching him over the rim of her wine glass. A shadow crossed his face. My father is satisfied with my performance. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed quietly. It's not. Eliza studied him, seeing the weight of expectations in the set of his shoulders. Is that why you work so hard? Always trying to earn his approval? I work hard because that's what success requires, he answered automatically, then frowned as if surprised by his own defensiveness. And what about happiness? What does that require? Adrian's hand tightened on his wine glass. Happiness is a luxury that people in our position can't always afford. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. His skin was warm and she felt him tense at the contact. What are you so afraid of, Adrian? I'm not. He started to pull away, but she held firm. You are. I see it every time I get too close, every time something threatens that perfect control of yours. Her thumb stroked across his knuckles. The question is why? For a moment, she thought he might actually answer. Something raw and real flickered. In his eyes, his lips parting slightly. Then his walls slammed back into place. It's getting late, he said, withdrawing his hand. We both have early meetings tomorrow. Eliza sat back, disappointed but not surprised. Of course, heaven forbid we let anything interfere with business. He stood, tugging at his sleeve in what she was beginning to recognize as a nervous gesture. I'll take the guest room. Adrian. Her voice stopped him halfway to the door. You can't avoid this forever. Whatever you're hiding, whatever you're afraid of, at some point you're going to have to trust someone. He didn't turn around, but she saw the tension ripple across his shoulders. Good night, Eliza. After he left, she remained at the table, tracing the rim of her wine glass with one finger. Every instinct told her there was more to Adrian, Lambert than the perfect businessman he presented to the world. She'd seen cracks in his facade, during their kiss, in unguarded moments when he thought she wasn't looking. Her own secret weighed heavily on her mind. How could she expect him to open up when she was keeping something so significant from him? But no, she couldn't think about that now, one step at a time. In the guest bathroom, Adrian gripped the marble counter, staring at his reflection. Eliza's words echoed in his mind. Whatever you're hiding, whatever you're afraid of. If she only knew. His inexperience loomed between them like an invisible wall, growing thicker with every touch, every glance, every moment of intimate conversation. How long could he maintain this charade? How long before she discovered just how pathetically unprepared he was for this marriage? The merger needed to succeed. Their family's expectations had to be met. But for the first time in his life, Adrian Lambert wasn't sure his legendary control would be enough to get him through this challenge. In the darkness of his temporary bedroom, he lay awake, haunted by the memory of Eliza's touch, her searching eyes, her impossible questions. Just down the hall, his wife, slept alone on their wedding night, probably wondering what kind of man she'd married. The truth was, Adrian wasn't sure he knew the answer to that question himself anymore. 3 days into their marriage, Adrian found himself facing an unexpected crisis. Not in the boardroom, those he could handle. No, this crisis came in the form of his new sister-in-law, Natasha Moreau, who now sat across from his desk at Lambert Industries with a knowing smirk on her face. You haven't slept with her yet, have you? Adrian's pen stopped mid-signature. I don't see how that's any of your business. Oh, it absolutely is. Natasha leaned forward, her dark eyes, so similar to Eliza's, sparkling with mischief. See, unlike our fathers, who think this marriage is about mergers and acquisitions, I actually care about my sister's happiness. Eliza seems perfectly content, he replied stiffly, though the words felt hollow even to him. Really? Natasha raised an eyebrow. Is that why she spent an hour on the phone with me last night, trying to understand why her new husband seems more interested in quarterly reports than in her? Heat crept up Adrian's neck. We have different priorities right now. The merger is done, Natasha cut in, echoing Eliza's words from their wedding night. What isn't done is the fact that you're treating my sister like she's a corporate asset instead of a woman who might actually want a real marriage. Adrian's fingers tightened around his pen. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. Natasha's playful demeanor vanished. Eliza agreed to this arrangement because she believed there was something genuine beneath your corporate robot routine. She saw something in you, God knows what, that made her think this could be more than just a business deal. Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. Adrian stood, moving to the window that overlooked Manhattan. It's complicated. It's really not. He heard Natasha stand. You're scared. I'm not. Please. Her laugh was soft, knowing. I've been watching you since the wedding. The way you look at her when you think no one's watching, that's not business, Adrian. That's desire. Raw, honest desire. And it terrifies you. He turned, ready to deny it, but the understanding in her eyes stopped him. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? She moved closer, lowering her voice. Look, I get it. You've spent your whole life being Philip Lambert's perfect son, all control, no weakness. But Eliza? Natasha shook her head. She'll see right through that eventually. And when she does, you'd better have something real to offer her. Before Adrian could respond, his intercom buzzed. Mr. Lambert, your wife is here. Panic flashed through him. I have a meeting. No, you don't. Natasha grinned. I canceled it. You're welcome. She headed for the door, passing Eliza as his wife entered. Remember what I said, brother dear? Eliza watched her sister leave, then turned to Adrian with a questioning look. Should I be worried that you're having secret meetings with my sister? Natasha was just... He struggled for words, still rattled by their conversation, expressing some concerns. About? Us. The word hung between them like smoke. Eliza moved further into the office, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. She wore a deep blue dress that made her skin glow, and Adrian had to force himself to maintain eye contact. And what concerns would those be? She asked, perching on the edge of his desk. The casual intimacy of her position made his mouth go dry. She thinks I'm not meeting expectations. Ah. Eliza's lips curved slightly. And are you? You tell me. The words came out more challenging than he'd intended. She studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. I think you're trying very hard to maintain control of something that can't be controlled. And what's that? This. She gestured between them. Whatever's happening here. The way you can barely look at me sometimes, but when you do, she trailed off, her cheeks flushing slightly. When you do, it's like you're seeing straight through every wall I've ever built. Adrian's heart hammered against his ribs. Eliza. Have dinner with me tonight, she cut in. Not in the suite. There's a little Italian place in the village I love. No business, no families, no expectations. Just us. Every instinct screamed at him to say no, to maintain distance, keep control, stay safe. But Natasha's words echoed in his mind. You'd better have something real to offer her. Okay, he heard himself say. Her smile was like sunrise. Pick me up at 7? He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. She slipped off his desk and headed for the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. Oh, and Adrian, wear something casual. You look like you sleep in those suits. After she left, Adrian sank into his chair, loosening his tie. What the hell was he doing? A casual dinner date with his wife, the kind of normal interaction most married couples took for granted, felt more terrifying than any hostile takeover he'd ever managed. His phone buzzed with a text from Natasha. Don't overthink it, just be real with her. Be real. Right. As if he even knew what that meant anymore. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls, but for once, Adrian's legendary focus was compromised. He caught himself checking the clock, adjusting his tie, running his hands through his hair. Nervous tells he'd trained himself out of years ago. At 6:30, he stood in front of his closet in the guest room, staring at rows of impeccable suits. Casual. What did that even mean? Finally, he pulled out dark jeans he'd worn maybe twice and a charcoal cashmere sweater. When he knocked on the main bedroom door at 6:55, his palms were embarrassingly damp. "Come in." Eliza stood by her vanity, fastening a delicate necklace. She wore jeans and a cream-colored sweater that slipped off one shoulder, her hair falling in soft waves around her face. The casual intimacy of her appearance hit him like a physical blow. "You clean up nice," she said, her eyes approving as they took him in. "I was half expecting you to show up in a suit anyway." "I do own other clothes," he replied, aiming for dry humor and almost hitting it. "Could have fooled me." She grabbed a small purse and moved toward him. "Ready?" The restaurant was tiny, tucked away on a quiet street in Greenwich Village. Exposed brick walls, candlelight, and the rich smell of garlic and wine created an atmosphere that was worlds away from the sterile corporate environments Adrian usually inhabited. "I found this place during grad school," Eliza explained as they were seated in a cozy corner booth. "Best gnocchi in the city." Adrian watched her interact with the waiter, noting how she lit up talking about the wine list and daily specials. This was her element, warm, personal, real. Everything he wasn't. "You're thinking too loud," she said after the waiter left. "Sorry." "Don't apologize, just—" She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "Talk to me, tell me something really." He stared at their hands, at the simple point of contact that sent electricity up his arm. I don't know how." "Yes, you do." Her voice was soft, encouraging. "Start small. What's your favorite color?" He almost laughed at the simplicity of the question. "Green. Dark green like pine trees." "See? Was that so hard?" Her thumb stroked across his knuckles. "Now tell me why." "My grandfather had a cabin in Vermont." The words came slowly, memories he hadn't accessed in years bubbling to the surface. "Before he died, I used to spend summers there. The forest behind the cabin. It was like another world. Safe. Quiet." When was the last time you went there?" "The cabin was sold after he died." It was an adjustment. The more the corporate answer slipped out automatically, and he saw disappointment flicker in her eyes. "I mean, yes, it was hard. The cabin was the only place I could just be. And now?" "Now?" He smiled without humor. "Now I have a corner office with a view of Central Park." "That's not the same thing." "No," he agreed quietly. "It's not." The waiter returned with their wine, and Adrian found himself relaxing, slightly as the evening progressed. Eliza told stories about her graduate school adventures, her work with underprivileged students, her dreams of starting a literacy program for inner-city kids. Her passion was infectious, her smile genuine in a way that made his chest ache. "You're staring," she said over tiramisu. "You're beautiful." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Her cheeks flushed, but she held his gaze. "So, are you when you let your guard down like this?" Heat crawled up his neck. "I'm not." "You are." She set down her fork. "The real you, the one hiding behind all those perfect suits and boardroom speeches, he's beautiful." Adrian's heart thundered in his chest. How did she do this? How did she see through every defense, every careful wall he'd built? "Eliza," his voice was rough. "I'm not. I can't." "Can't what?" She leaned forward, her eyes intent on his face. "Be real? Feel something? Let someone in?" "Yes," he whispered. "All of it. But you already are." Her hand found his again. "Every time you look at me like that, every time you let slip a real smile or a genuine thought, you're already doing it. You're just fighting it every step of the way." He stared at their joined hands, at the simple gold band on her finger that marked her as his wife. His wife who saw too much, who pushed too hard, who made him want things he'd never allowed himself to want. "I don't know how to be what you need," he admitted finally. Her smile was soft, understanding. "Maybe start by being what you need, and we'll figure out the rest together." For the first time since their wedding, Adrian felt something inside him shift. A hairline crack in the perfect walls he'd built around his heart. And the most terrifying part? He wasn't sure he wanted to patch it. The annual Moreau Foundation, Gala was in full swing at the Metropolitan Museum's Temple of Dender, but Eliza couldn't focus on the glittering crowd or the elaborate decorations. Her attention kept drifting to Adrian, who stood across the room deep in conversation with her father. Even from this distance, she could read the tension in his shoulders, the careful way he held himself. "He's different with you, you know." Eliza turned to find Regina Collins, her father's longtime assistant, watching her with knowing eyes. The older woman had been like a second mother to her after her own mother's death, and she missed nothing. "What do you mean?" Regina sipped her champagne. "I've known Adrian Lambert for years, watched him grow from Philip's shadow into his own man. But I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching." Heat crept into Eliza's cheeks. "We're still getting to know each other." Regina's knowing smile said she wasn't fooled. "That's why you've barely taken your eyes off him all evening?" Before Eliza could respond, a familiar voice cut through the crowd, stopping her heart mid-beat. "Professor Moreau, or should I say Mrs. Lambert now?" Eliza turned slowly, her fingers tightening around her champagne flute. Carson Reed stood before her, as handsome and dangerous as ever in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. His presence here was impossible. She'd made sure he wouldn't be on any guest list. "Carson." She kept her voice level, professional. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Last-minute invitation from the board. They're very interested in my research on urban education reform. Something you used to be quite passionate about, as I recall." Regina stepped closer to Eliza, a subtle show of support. "Mr. Reed, I believe Mr. Moreau was looking for you earlier. Something about funding allocations?" Carson's smile turned predatory. "I'll find him later. Right now, I'd love to catch up with my former colleague." "How long has it been, Eliza? 2 years?" 23 months, she answered automatically, then cursed herself for revealing she'd kept count. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "So you have been keeping track. Interesting. Is everything all right?" Adrian's voice behind her was like a lifeline. She felt his hand settle at the small of her back, warm and steady through the silk of her gown. "Adrian Lambert." Carson extended his hand. "Carson Reed." The image of Carson Reed's smug face, the implied threats, the way Eliza had trembled slightly when she told her story. It all made him burn with an unfamiliar rage. He wanted to destroy the man, to ensure he never came near Eliza again. More than that, he wanted to go to her now. To hold her, to prove that she was safe, protected, cherished. But that way lay danger. Already he was losing his grip on the careful control he'd maintained all his life. Already she was becoming more than just a business arrangement. And the most terrifying part? He was starting to think that might not be such a bad thing after all. The morning after the gala, Adrian sat in his home office reviewing security reports. He'd had his team dig deep into Carson Reed's background, and what they'd found made his blood boil. Multiple allegations of academic misconduct, all mysteriously dropped. Several female colleagues who'd suddenly changed universities mid-semester. A pattern of behavior that suggested the incident with Eliza wasn't an isolated case. A soft knock at the door interrupted his dark thoughts. "Come in." Eliza entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She'd traded last night's evening gown for yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. The casual intimacy of her appearance hit him harder than any designer dress. "You missed breakfast," she said, setting 1 cup on his desk. "Again. I've been busy." He gestured to the reports, then immediately regretted it when he saw her face darken. "You're investigating him?" "Yes." She sank into the chair across from his desk. "Adrian, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." He met her eyes. "He threatened you. He made insinuations. That's what Carson does. He plays mind games. Which is exactly why I need to know what we're dealing with." Adrian's fingers tightened around his coffee cup. "Did you know about the others?" Eliza went still. "What others?" He pushed several files across the desk. "At least 3 other Women in academia who've had similar experiences, all brilliant researchers, all forced to leave their positions after confrontations with Reed. She flipped through the files, her face growing paler. I had no idea. He made me feel like I was the only one. Like maybe I was crazy for seeing what I saw. You weren't crazy. Adrian's voice was steel. He's a predator who targets talented women and tries to destroy them when they don't play by his rules. And now he's trying to get foundation funding. Eliza's laugh was bitter. God, he never stops. He won't get it. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. I've already spoken to your father. She looked up sharply. You told him? Not everything. Just enough to make sure Reed's proposal gets buried so deep it'll never see daylight. Thank you. Her voice was soft, vulnerable in a way that made his chest ache. You don't have to thank me for this. Yes, I do. She stood, moving around the desk to stand beside his chair. You're protecting me, even though this whole marriage was just supposed to be a business arrangement. Adrian's heart thundered against his ribs as she leaned against his desk, her knee brushing his thigh. Eliza, when are you going to admit that this is more than business? Her fingers traced his jaw, sending electricity down his spine. When are you going to stop pretending you don't feel what I feel? He caught her wrist but couldn't make himself pull away. It's not that simple. It could be. She stepped closer, between his knees. If you'd just let go of this perfect control for once. I can't. The words were a whisper. Why not? Because. His grip on her wrist tightened. Because I don't know how to be what you want. I want you. Her free hand slid into his hair. Just you, Adrian. Not the perfect CEO or the dutiful son. Just the man who looks at me like I'm everything he's afraid to want. A groan escaped him as her nails scraped his scalp. Eliza, please. Please what? She was so close now, her breath ghosting across his lips. Tell me to stop. Tell me this is just business. Tell me you don't lie awake at night thinking about me. He couldn't. God help him, he couldn't lie to her. Not about this. Not when every cell in his body was screaming for her touch. The phone on his desk buzzed, making them both jump. Eliza started to step back, but his hands shot to her hips, holding her in place. Don't, he rasped. Her eyes widened. Adrian? The phone buzzed again. His assistant's voice came through the speaker. Mr. Lambert, your father is here. Reality crashed back like ice water. Adrian released Eliza as if burned, standing so abruptly his chair rolled back. Send him in, he managed, his voice only slightly strained. Eliza was already moving away, straightening her clothes. But when Philip Lambert entered the office, she didn't leave. Instead, she settled gracefully into one of the visitor chairs, every inch the perfect corporate wife. Son. Philip's steel-gray eyes took in the scene, the coffee cups, the scattered files, the slight flush on both their faces. Am I interrupting? Not at all. Adrian buttoned his suit jacket, grateful for years of practice maintaining composure. Eliza was just leaving. Actually, she smiled sweetly, I think I'll stay. This is about the foundation, isn't it? The Reed situation? Philip's eyebrows rose slightly. Among other things. Then as a board member and former colleague of Dr. Reed's, I should be part of this discussion. Adrian's heart rate kicked up another notch. What was she doing? Very well. Philip took the other chair, though I must say I'm surprised by your involvement. I was under the impression this marriage was meant to be hands off. Things change. Eliza's voice was silk over steel. People change. Isn't that right, Adrian? He met her eyes across. The desk saw the challenge there. The question. Would he back her play? Stand with her against his father? Or retreat into the safety of business as usual? Yes, he heard himself say. They do. Something flickered in Philip's expression. I see. And these changes, they won't affect the merger integration? On the contrary. Adrian moved to stand behind Eliza's chair, his hand settling on her shoulder. I believe having my wife's insight will be invaluable to the process. Eliza's fingers covered his, squeezing gently. A silent thank you. Interesting. Philip studied them both. Well then, shall we discuss the Reed situation? The next hour was a masterclass in corporate strategy. Eliza proved herself more than capable of keeping up with the Lamberts, her academic perspective adding depth to their business analysis. She never once mentioned her personal history with Carson, focusing instead on the potential risks to the foundation's reputation. Through it all, Adrian found himself increasingly distracted by her presence, the subtle scent of her shampoo, the way she gestured when making a point, the perfect curve of her neck when she tilted her head in thought. I think that covers everything, Philip said, finally standing, though I must admit this has been enlightening. How so? Eliza asked. His father's smile was razor sharp. Let's just say I'm beginning to understand why Adrian chose you. After he left, silence fell heavy between them. Adrian remained behind his desk, watching Eliza process his father's words. Did you? She asked finally. Choose me? You know this was arranged. That's not what I asked. She stood, moving to the window. When they presented the option, did you choose me? Or did you just accept the most advantageous business proposition? Adrian struggled with the truth. I didn't look at your picture. Didn't research you beyond the basics. I treated it like any other merger. And now? He moved to stand behind her, close enough to feel her warmth but not quite touching. Now I think that was the biggest mistake of my life. She turned surprised. What? If I'd known... His hand came up to cup her cheek. If I'd let myself see you, really see you, I never would have been able to treat this like business. And is that what you're doing now? Her voice trembled slightly. Treating me like business? His thumb traced her bottom lip. You know, I'm not. Then what are you afraid of? Everything, nothing. The way she made him feel things he'd never allowed himself to feel. The terror of wanting something, someone, more than success or control or his father's approval. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I don't know how to be human. Her smile was sad. Vulnerable. In love. His heart stopped at that last word. Eliza. It's okay. She stepped back and he felt the loss like physical pain. You don't have to say it, not until you're ready, but Adrian? Her eyes met his, fierce and determined. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not giving up on us. She left him standing there, staring at the city through glass walls that suddenly felt like a prison. Everything he'd built his life around, control, success, perfect composure, was crumbling in the face of this woman who saw through every defense he'd ever constructed. And the scariest part? He was starting to think she might be worth the fall. The dress arrived on a Tuesday morning, a week after the gala incident. Eliza found the garment bag hanging on her closet door with a simple note. Dinner, 8 p.m. Inside was a midnight blue evening gown that took her breath away. The silk seemed to flow like water, its simple lines somehow both elegant and seductive. A second note fluttered from the tissue paper. Car will pick you up at 7:30, no questions. Eliza smiled, running her fingers over the fabric. I'm an old friend of your wife's. Eliza felt Adrian's fingers tense against her spine. Is that so? We worked together at Columbia, Carson explained smoothly. Very closely, in fact, until certain misunderstandings arose. I see. Adrian's voice was arctic. And you're here tonight because? The foundation is considering funding my latest research project. Carson's eyes slid to Eliza. Perhaps we could discuss it over coffee sometime? For old time's sake? Before Eliza could respond, Adrian stepped forward slightly. My wife's schedule is quite full these days. If you're interested in foundation funding, you can submit a proposal through proper channels. Carson's smile turned sharp. Of course, wouldn't want to overstep. He looked at Eliza again. Though some might say it's a bit late for that concern, Adrian went very still beside her. Excuse me? Nothing, nothing. Carson raised his hands in mock surrender. Just reminiscing. Congratulations on your marriage, both of you. I'm sure you'll be very happy together. After he melted back into the crowd, Eliza released a shaky breath. Adrian's hand was still at her back, but now it felt like iron. Want to tell me what that was about? His voice was carefully controlled. Not here. She glanced around, at the crowded room. Please. They found refuge in a quiet alcove near the Egyptian wing. Adrian stood with his back to the party, effectively shielding her from view. Talk to me, he said quietly. Eliza wrapped her arms around herself. Carson and we worked together at Columbia. He was leading a research project on education reform in underprivileged communities. I was brought on as a consultant. And he was brilliant, charismatic, passionate about making real change. She smiled bitterly. Or so I thought. Adrian's expression darkened. What did he do? Eliza hesitated. This was dangerous territory, secrets she'd buried deep. But looking at Adrian now, seeing the genuine concern in his eyes, she couldn't keep hiding. He manipulated data, changed results to support his theories. When I discovered what he was doing, I reported it to the ethics board. What happened? There was an investigation. He was discredited, lost his position. She swallowed hard. But before that, he tried to convince me to keep quiet. Said we could do great things together, make real change happen. And when you refused? He turned it around on me, claimed I'd been complicit all along, that I'd helped fake the data. Her voice shook slightly. It took months to clear my name. My father's influence helped, but the damage was done. My reputation in academia took a hit. Some people still whisper about it. Adrian's jaw clenched. Is that why you left Columbia? She nodded. I needed a fresh start, but seeing him here tonight... She shuddered. He shouldn't have been invited. I'll take care of it. Adrian's voice was steel. He won't bother you again. Eliza looked up at him, surprised by the fierce protectiveness in his tone. Adrian, no one threatens my wife. His eyes met hers, intense and unwavering. No one hurts you, Eliza. Not while I'm here. The raw honesty in his voice made her breath catch. Without thinking, she stepped closer, resting her hands on his chest. His heart thundered under her palm. Thank you, she whispered. His hands came up to frame her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. You don't have to thank me for this. They stood there for a long moment, the air between them charged with possibility. Eliza could feel his breath on her lips, see the battle raging, in his eyes between desire and control. We should get back, he said finally, his voice rough. Should we? His thumbs traced her jaw, sending shivers down her spine. Your father will be looking for us. Let him look. Adrian's eyes darkened. Eliza. She pushed up on her, toes bringing their faces closer. Stop thinking so much. For a moment, she thought he might actually kiss her. His grip on her face tightened slightly, his gaze dropping to her lips. Then voices approached their alcove, and he stepped back, as if burned. Later, he said, straightening his tie. We'll talk more later. But later never came. The rest of the evening was a whirlwind of social obligations and business discussions. By the time they made it back to the suite, Adrian had retreated behind his walls again, citing early meetings and disappearing into the guest room. Alone in their bed, Eliza stared at the ceiling, thinking about the look in Adrian's eyes when Carson had threatened her. For all his careful control, all his strategic distance, something real had blazed through in that moment. Something that felt a lot like possession, like protection, like love. Down the hall, Adrian lay awake in the guest room, his mind racing. After their confrontation in his office last week, Adrian had thrown himself into work, barely speaking beyond polite pleasantries. But she'd caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his eyes dark with something that looked like longing. At precisely 7:30, she stepped into the waiting town car, her heart racing with anticipation. The driver remained silent as they wound through Manhattan's evening traffic, finally stopping at a private entrance she didn't recognize. An elevator whisked her to what appeared to be a rooftop restaurant, but when the doors opened, she realized it was empty except for a single table set for two. The entire space was lit with hundreds of candles, their flames dancing in the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Adrian stood by the windows, his back to her, hands in the pockets of his perfectly tailored black suit. He turned at the sound of her heels, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "You look," he started, then stopped, swallowing hard. "So do you." She moved closer, drawn by the intensity of his gaze. "What is all this?" "This is me, trying." His voice was rough. "Trying to be more than business. Adrian, please." He held up a hand. "Let me get this out. I've been practicing all day." She bit back a smile at the admission and nodded. "I'm not good at this," he began. "Feelings, vulnerability. My whole life has been about control, about being perfect. And then you." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up its perfect style. "You walk into my life and suddenly nothing makes sense anymore. Every wall I've built, every rule I've lived by, they all crumble when you look at me." Eliza's heart thundered in her chest. "Is that such a bad thing?" "It's terrifying." He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "You make me want things I've never allowed myself to want. Feel things I've spent my whole life avoiding." "Like what?" she whispered. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Like this. Like the way my heart races every time you're near. Like the fact that I can't sleep at night knowing you're just down the hall." "Then stop sleeping down the hall." The words slipped out before she could stop them. His eyes darkened. "Eliza, I mean it." She stepped closer, eliminating the last space between them. "Stop running from this, from us." "I don't know how to..." He struggled visibly. "I'm not experienced." She finished softly, watching shock flash across his face. "I know, Adrian." He went completely still. "What?" "I've known since our wedding night." Her hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath her palm. "The way you tensed when I touched you. How you never stay in a room alone with me too long. The panic in your eyes whenever things get too intimate." His voice cracked. "How?" "Because I see you," she said simply. "The real you, not the perfect facade you show the world. And it doesn't change anything." He tried to step back, but she held firm. "It changes everything." "Why? Because you're not as experienced as other men? Because you chose to wait?" "I didn't choose," he bit out. "I just never found the right moment. Never trusted anyone enough. And then it became easier to focus on work, on success, to pretend it was a choice rather than fear." "What are you afraid of?" His laugh was bitter. "Disappointing you. Being inadequate. Losing control." "Adrian." She framed his face with her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "The only thing that could disappoint me is if you keep pushing me away." The vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke her heart. "I don't know how to let you in." "Yes, you do." She pressed closer, feeling him shudder. "You're doing it right now." His hands settled on her waist, grip almost painful. If you understood how much I want you, then show me." For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. His gaze dropped to her lips, his breathing ragged. Then a phone rang, shattering the moment. Adrian cursed, pulling the device from his pocket. His expression darkened as he read the screen. "It's your father." Eliza stepped back, frustrated. "Of course it is." But Adrian didn't answer the call. Instead, he turned off the phone and tossed it onto a nearby table. "Adrian? No more interruptions." His voice was low, determined. "No more running." Before she could process his words, he closed the distance between them and kissed her. This wasn't like their chaste wedding kiss. This was raw, desperate, years of repressed desire pouring out in a single moment. His hands tangled in her hair, destroying her careful styling, and she didn't care. All that mattered was the taste of him, the solid warmth of his body against hers, the small sounds of need escaping his throat. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, his eyes were wild. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "Don't you dare apologize." She grabbed his tie, keeping him close. "Don't you dare turn this into something wrong." "It's not wrong," he breathed. "It's just overwhelming. You're overwhelming." She smiled, smoothing his rumpled collar. "Good. Maybe it's time someone overwhelmed the great Adrian Lambert." He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing deeply. "Stay with me tonight." "Adrian, not for that." His cheeks flushed slightly. "Just stay. Let me hold you. Let me try to be what you deserve. You already are." She kissed him softly. "You always have been." The rest of dinner passed in a haze of intimate conversation and lingering touches. Adrian told her about his childhood, about the pressure of being Philip Lambert's only son, about the lonely years at boarding school where he learned to lock away his emotions. She shared stories of her mother's death, her father's subsequent withdrawal into work, how books and teaching had become her escape. Later in their suite, Adrian led her to the master bedroom, their bedroom, with trembling hands. They lay together fully clothed, his arms around her waist, her head on his chest, talking until the sky began to lighten. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair as dawn approached. "For what? For seeing me, for being patient, for—" He tightened his arms around her. "For making me want to be more than what my father made me." Eliza pressed closer, guilt gnawing at her heart. Her own secret felt like a weight between them, the full truth about Carson Reed, about why she'd really agreed to this marriage. Soon she would have to tell him everything. Soon she would have to trust that this fragile new thing between them was strong enough to survive the truth. But for now, in the quiet hours before dawn, she let herself believe in the possibility of love. Real love, built on trust and understanding, rather than business arrangements and family obligations. Adrian's breathing evened out, his body relaxing into sleep, and Eliza made a silent promise to herself. Whatever came next, whatever storms they had to weather, she would fight for this. Fight for him. Fight for the beautiful, vulnerable heart he was finally letting her see. Because some things were worth the risk of falling, and Adrian Lambert was worth everything. 2 weeks after their rooftop dinner, Eliza sat in Regina Collins's Central Park West apartment, clutching a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Outside, rain pelted against the windows, matching her turbulent mood. "You have to tell him," Regina said softly, "before he finds out some other way." "I know." Eliza set down the cup, her hands shaking slightly. "But everything's finally real between us. He's opening up, letting me in. If I tell him now, he'll find out eventually." Regina leaned forward, her eyes kind but firm. "Carson's latest funding proposal isn't going away quietly. He's making noise about discrimination, threatening to go public with evidence of misconduct at the foundation." Eliza's stomach churned. "What kind of evidence?" "Emails, records of private meetings." Regina hesitated. "Photos." "Oh, God." Eliza pressed her fingers to her temples. "The conference in Boston." "Yes. But nothing happened. I shut him down, told him I wasn't interested." "The photos don't show that part." Regina's voice was gentle. "They show you entering his hotel room, leaving 2 hours later looking disheveled. Because we fought. Eliza stood, pacing the elegant living room. He tried to kiss me. I pushed him away, knocked over a lamp. In the process, we argued about the research, about his methods. I told him I was going to report him. I know, sweetheart. Regina watched her with maternal concern. But how will it look to Adrian? To the board? Your father may have buried the ethics investigation, but if Carson goes public now, Adrian will think I lied to him. The realization hit her like physical pain. He'll think I covered up an affair, that I'm just like his mother, Regina finished. Yes. Eliza sank back onto the couch, remembering the night Adrian had told her about his parents' divorce, how his mother's infidelity had destroyed his father, turned him cold and distant, how Adrian had learned then that love was a weakness, trust, a luxury he couldn't afford. I have to tell him everything, she whispered. About Carson's harassment, about Dad covering up the investigation to protect the foundation's reputation, about... She swallowed hard. About why I really agreed to the marriage. It might cost you everything. I know. Eliza blinked back tears. But if I don't tell him, and he finds out from Carson instead... Her phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. Dinner tonight? I have something for you. The simple message, so casual and intimate, made her heart ache. 2 weeks of falling asleep in his arms, of morning coffee and shy kisses, of watching him slowly let down his walls. 2 weeks of falling impossibly, irreversibly in love. Go, Regina said softly. Tell him. Give him a chance to understand. Back at their penthouse, Eliza found Adrian in the kitchen, attempting to cook what appeared to be pasta. He looked up when she entered, his face lighting up in a way that made her chest tight. You're early, he said, wiping his hands on a dish towel. I wanted to surprise you. You're cooking? His sheepish smile was adorable. Trying to. I may have overestimated my abilities slightly. She moved closer, inhaling the rich scent of garlic and herbs. It smells amazing. Really? His arm slid around her waist, pulling her against him. Because I'm pretty sure I ruined the sauce at least twice. The effort counts more than the result. She pressed her face into his chest, memorizing his warmth, his scent, the steady beat of his heart. Eliza? His voice turned concerned. What's wrong? We need to talk. She felt him tense, his arms tightening fractionally. That sounds ominous. It's... She pulled back enough to see his face. There are things you need to know. About me, about Carson, about why I agreed to this marriage. Adrian's expression closed off slightly. Let me turn off the stove. They ended up on the living room couch, far enough apart for Eliza to think clearly. Outside, the rain had intensified, drumming against the windows like a warning. Before I start, she said quietly, I need you to know that everything that's happened between us, everything we've shared these past weeks, that's all real. What I feel for you is real. His jaw tightened. Just tell me. So she did. She told him everything. About Carson's escalating harassment, about the compromised research data, about the night in Boston when he'd tried to force himself on her. She explained how her father had buried the ethics investigation to protect the foundation, how Carson had threatened to go public with twisted versions of events. The marriage was part of the solution, she admitted, watching Adrian's face grow more distant with each word. A Lambert on the board would give the foundation more credibility, make it harder for Carson to attack our reputation, and She swallowed hard. I needed the protection of your name, your influence. So I was convenient. His voice was ice. A business solution to a personal problem. At first, she whispered. But Adrian, the photos, he cut in, the ones from Boston, do they exist? Yes. Show me. With trembling fingers, she pulled up the email Carson had sent her last week. The photos were grainy but clear enough, Eliza entering his hotel room, leaving hours later with messed up hair and wrinkled clothes. Out of context, they painted exactly the picture Carson had intended. Adrian stared at her phone for a long moment, his face unreadable. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was afraid." Her voice cracked. "Afraid you wouldn't believe me. Afraid of losing this thing between us before it had a chance to be real." "Real?" He laughed bitterly. "What part of this has been real, Eliza? The part where you married me for protection? The part where you let me fall for you knowing you were hiding this? All of it." She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "Everything I feel for you is real. Everything we've shared was built on lies." He stood, running a hand through his hair. "God, I'm such a fool. I actually thought I let myself believe." "Adrian, please." She stood too, desperate to make him understand. "I know I should have told you sooner, but was falling in love with you. I didn't want to risk." "Don't." His voice was raw. "Don't say that, not now. It's the truth." "The truth?" He turned on her, eyes blazing. "The truth is that you used me just like everyone else, used my name, my influence, my—" He stopped, breathing hard. "My feelings for you. That's not— I need to go." He moved toward the door, grabbing his coat. "I can't— I need to think." "Adrian, wait." She caught his arm. "Please, just let me explain." He shook off her grip, but paused at the door. "You know what the worst part is?" His voice was barely audible over the rain. "I would have helped you anyway. If you'd just been honest from the start, if you'd trusted me." He shook his head. "But you didn't. And now I don't know if I can ever trust you." The door closed behind him with a quiet click that seemed louder than a slam. Eliza sank to the floor, tears finally breaking free. On the coffee table, Adrian's phone buzzed with an incoming email. The subject line made her blood run cold. "Press release draft. Carson Reed allegations against Moreau Foundation." The truth was out. But the cost? Oh God, the cost might be higher than she could bear. Adrian stood in his father's study, rainwater still dripping from his coat onto the expensive Persian rug. The press release draft glowed on his tablet screen, each word like a knife to his chest. "Carson Reed plans to go public tomorrow morning," Philip Lambert said, watching his son from behind the massive mahogany desk. "He's claiming the foundation covered up research fraud, that Eliza was intimately involved in the deception. It's not true." The words came automatically, surprising them both. Philip's eyebrows rose. "You seem very certain, considering the circumstances." "I am." Adrian set down the tablet, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "Eliza didn't help falsify data. She's the one who exposed Reed's fraud. The photos are being presented without context." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Reed tried to assault her that night. She fought him off." Understanding dawned in his father's eyes, and Richard Moreau buried the investigation to protect the foundation's reputation. "Yes. Which is why the marriage was arranged so quickly." Philip stood, moving to pour 2 glasses of scotch. "To ensure both families had a vested interest in keeping this quiet." Adrian accepted the offered drink but didn't take a sip. "She should have told me." "Would you have believed her?" His father's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. "The Adrian Lambert I knew 2 months ago would have seen those photos and assumed the worst, just like I did when your mother—" "Don't." Adrian's grip tightened on the glass. "This isn't the same thing." "Isn't it?" Philip studied him over the rim of his scotch. "A powerful man trying to destroy a woman's reputation because she rejected him? History has a way of repeating itself, son." Adrian's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" His father sighed heavily, setting down his drink. "Your mother didn't have an affair?" The world tilted sideways. "What?" "James Richardson, my former partner, made advances toward her. When she refused him, he fabricated evidence of an affair." Philip's voice was distant, lost in memory. Photos, emails, hotel receipts, all carefully arranged to tell the story he wanted told. But you divorced her. You said. I didn't believe her when she tried to explain. The admission seemed to age him 10 years. I was too proud, too hurt, too convinced that everyone eventually betrays you. By the time I learned the truth, it was too late. She'd already moved to Europe, rebuilt her life without us. Adrian sank into a chair, his legs suddenly weak. Why are you telling me this now? Because you're making the same mistake I did. Philip moved to stand by the window, watching the rain. Letting pride and fear destroy something real. She lied to me. She protected herself the only way she knew how. His father turned, back to face him. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Before Adrian could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from Natasha, 911. Get to Presbyterian Hospital now. It's Eliza. The world narrowed to a single point of terror. I have to go. Adrian. His father's voice stopped him at the door. Don't waste 20 years regretting what you could have fixed in 20 minutes. The drive to the hospital was a blur of rain and panic. Adrian found Natasha in the emergency waiting room, her usually perfect makeup smeared with tears. What happened? Carson Reed happened. Natasha's voice shook with rage. He showed up at her office at Columbia, tried to convince her to sign some statement supporting his version of events. When she refused, she swallowed hard. He pushed her down the stairs. Adrian's vision went red. Where is he? Police have him. She grabbed his arm. She's asking for you. The sight of Eliza in the hospital bed nearly brought him to his knees. Her face was bruised, her right arm in a cast, but her eyes lit up when she saw him, then immediately filled with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Adrian. He crossed the room in 3 strides, carefully gathering her into his arms. No, I'm sorry, I should have stayed. Should have listened. I should have told you everything from the start. Her good hand clutched his shirt. I was just so scared of losing you. You haven't lost me. He pressed his face into her hair, breathing her in. You couldn't lose me if you tried. She pulled back enough to see his face, but the press release, the scandal, is being handled. He smoothed her hair back from her face. My father is calling a board meeting. We're going to release everything. The original ethics investigation, Reed's harassment, the cover-up. No more secrets. Your father? Her eyes widened. But the merger will survive. He kissed her forehead gently. Some things are more important than business. A small sob escaped her. I never meant to hurt you. I know. He wiped away her tears with his thumb. And I never meant to make you feel like you couldn't trust me with the truth. I do trust you. Her voice was fierce despite her injuries. I trust you more than anyone I've ever known. These past weeks, everything between us, it's been the most real thing in my life. Adrian's heart clenched. Mine too. Even now? She searched his face. Even knowing everything? Especially now. He took her good hand, lacing their fingers together. Because now, I understand why you did what you did. And because He took a deep breath, finally ready to say the words he'd been feeling for weeks. Because I love you. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Adrian, you don't have to say it back. He brushed away her tears. I just needed you to know. No more hiding, no more walls. I love you too. The words tumbled out in a rush. God, I love you so much it scares me sometimes. He kissed her then, careful of her injuries but pouring everything he felt into the gentle press of his lips against hers. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his chest, and he felt her slowly relax. Will you stay? She murmured, already drowsy from the pain medication, always. He settled into the chair beside her bed, keeping her hand in his. Get some rest, I'll be right here. As she drifted off to sleep, Adrian's phone buzzed with another text from his father. Board meeting set for 7 a.m. Reed's press release will never see daylight. Take care of your wife. Adrian looked down at Eliza's sleeping face, at their intertwined fingers, at the golden band on his finger that had started as a business transaction and become something so much more. I will, he whispered to both, his father and himself. I promise. Outside, the rain finally began to ease, and the first rays of sunrise painted the hospital room in shades of hope. They had weathered their first real storm, faced their deepest fears, and come out stronger. Together. It wasn't the beginning he'd planned, but maybe that was the point. Some things couldn't be controlled or arranged or perfectly managed. Some things like love had to be messy and real and brave, and for the first time in his life, Adrian Lambert was ready to embrace the beautiful chaos of being truly, completely in love. The board meeting at Lambert Industries began precisely at 7 a.m., 3 days after Eliza's attack. Adrian stood at the head of the conference table, his father on his right, Richard Moreau on his left. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. The evidence is irrefutable, Adrian concluded, closing the presentation that detailed Carson Reed's years of misconduct. Dr. Reed manipulated research data, harassed multiple women in academia, and when threatened with exposure, attempted to destroy reputations and careers. 3 days ago, he physically assaulted my wife when she refused to support his false narrative. Richard Moreau's face had grown increasingly pale during the presentation. I should have listened to her, he said quietly. When Eliza first came to me about his misconduct, I was more concerned about the foundation's reputation than my own daughter's safety. We all make mistakes in the name of protecting what we've built, Philip Lambert interjected, his eyes meeting Adrian's. Briefly, the question is how we make it right. The police have Carson in custody, Adrian continued. He'll face charges for the assault, but that's not enough. We need to ensure this never happens again. Not to Eliza, not to anyone. The next hour was spent crafting a strategy. The foundation would release a comprehensive statement detailing Reed's misconduct and the subsequent investigation. They would establish a whistleblower protection program and create an independent ethics review board. Most importantly, they would reach out to Reed's other victims, offering support and resources to help them reclaim their careers. As the board members filed out, Richard caught Adrian's arm. How is she? Recovering. Adrian's voice softened slightly. The doctors say she can come home tomorrow. And are you two? We're working through it. Adrian met his father-in-law's eyes. She deserved better from all of us, but especially from you. Richard flinched. I know. Fix it, Adrian said simply. Not for the foundation, not for appearances. For her. Back at the hospital, Adrian found Eliza sitting up in bed, surrounded by student papers she was attempting to grade one-handed. She looked up when he entered, her face brightening despite the lingering bruises. How did it go? He sat on the edge of her bed, carefully moving papers aside. The board approved everything. The statement goes out this afternoon, and my father is finally ready to be a father instead of just a CEO. He took her good hand, running his thumb over her knuckles. He wants to make amends. Eliza was quiet for a moment, processing. I'm not sure I'm ready to forgive him yet. You don't have to be. Adrian brought her hand to his lips. You don't have to forgive any of us right away. We all failed you in different ways. Not you. She squeezed his fingers. You believed me. Even when everything looked bad. Even when I'd given you every reason to doubt me. You believed me. Because I know you. He reached up to trace her cheek, careful of the fading bruises. The real you, not the story Carson tried to sell or the perfect daughter your father wanted you to be. Just you. And you're the most honest, ethical person I've ever known. Tears welled in her eyes. How do you do that? Do what? See straight through to my heart. She leaned into his touch. Make me feel safe and seen and loved with just a few words. Practice, he smiled. I've been studying you since the moment I saw you in that wedding dress. Learning your tells, your truths, your beautiful heart. His voice roughened. I may have started this marriage as a business arrangement, but loving you has become my life's work. A tear slipped down her cheek. Take me home? Tomorrow. He wiped away the tear. Doctor's orders. No. She caught his hand. Take me home to our real home. Not the penthouse suite we've been living in. I want to start our real life together. Adrian's heart skipped. He'd been planning to bring this up later, but actually, I have something to show you. He pulled out his tablet, opening a series of photos. I bought a brownstone in the West Village. 4 stories, private garden, original hardwood floors. It needs some work, but it could be ours, she finished, eyes shining as she swiped through the photos. Not a Lambert property or a Moreau investment. Just ours. Exactly. He watched her face light up at each new image. I thought maybe you could set up your literacy program in the ground floor space. There's room for a small library, teaching area. She looked up at him, wonder in her eyes. You remembered. I remember everything you tell me. He took the tablet, setting it aside. Every dream, every hope, every little thing that makes you smile. I want to build a life with you, Eliza. A real life filled with books and students and maybe... He hesitated, then pushed forward. Maybe someday. Children of our own. Her breath caught. Adrian. Not right away. He rushed to add. I know we're still figuring things out, still learning each other, and I'm still... He flushed slightly. Working up to certain aspects of marriage. Hey. She pulled him closer. We have all the time in the world. There's no rush, no pressure. Just us. Learning and growing together. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing her in. How did I get so lucky? You opened your heart, she said simply. Let down your walls. Chose love over fear. Her good hand came up to cup his cheek. Just like I did. I love you, he whispered. More every day. Show me the house again? She reached for the tablet. I want to start planning our future. They spent the next hour exploring the photos, dreaming out loud about paint colors and furniture arrangements. Eliza's eyes lit up at the garden possibilities while Adrian got excited about converting the top floor into a private library for her growing book collection. We can move in as soon as you're recovered, he said, watching her stifle a yawn. The basic renovations are already done. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? He smiled sheepishly. Since our first real dinner date, I knew then that I wanted to build something real with you. Something that was just ours. She caught his hand, her expression turning serious. No more secrets? No more walls? No more secrets, he promised. No more perfect facades or corporate masks, just us being real together. Even if it's messy? Especially then. He kissed her softly. I'm learning that the best things in life usually are. A knock at the door interrupted them. Regina, Collins carrying a thick folder. The press statement is ready for your review. Adrian started to reach for it, but Eliza caught his hand. Leave it for tomorrow. Stay with me? He looked at Regina, who smiled knowingly. It can wait, she said, setting down the folder. Family comes first. As she left, Adrian settled back on the bed beside Eliza, careful of her injuries. She curled into his side, her head finding its natural place on his chest. Tell me more about our house, she murmured sleepily. Tell me about our future. So he did, painting pictures with words until she drifted off to sleep. Even then, he kept talking softly, sharing dreams he'd never dared to voice before. Dreams of Sunday mornings and holiday dinners, of children's laughter and quiet evenings spent reading together. Tomorrow they would face the press, deal with Carson's arrest, begin the long process of healing old wounds and building new bridges. But tonight, in the quiet of the hospital room, they were just Adrian and Eliza, no longer bound by business or obligation, but by something far stronger. Love, he was learning, was both simpler and more complex than any merger he'd ever managed. It couldn't be controlled or predicted or perfectly arranged. It could only be felt, trusted, and cherished. And finally, after 28 years of perfect control, Adrian Lambert was ready to let love lead the way. 6 months after Carson Reed's arrest, Adrian stood in the garden of their West Village brownstone, watching Eliza interact with her first group of literacy program students. The autumn sun caught the gold in her hair, and her laugh carried across the space as she helped a young girl sound out a particularly challenging word. The program had started small, just 10 students from underprivileged backgrounds, but it was already making waves in the education community. Eliza's innovative teaching methods, combined with the intimate setting of their converted ground floor, had produced remarkable results. "She's quite something, isn't she?" Adrian turned to find his father watching from the doorway. Their relationship had shifted in the months since everything happened, growing into something more honest, more real. "She's everything," Adrian replied simply. Philip moved to stand beside his son, hands in his pockets. "Your mother called yesterday." Adrian's breath caught. After 20 years of silence, the monthly calls with his mother had become a cherished part of his new life. "How is she?" "Good. She's thinking of visiting for Christmas." Philip's voice held a note of vulnerability Adrian had never heard before. "If that's all right with you and Eliza." "I think..." Adrian watched his wife demonstrate an animated reading technique, her whole face lit with joy. "I think it's time for all of us to heal." The class wrapped up, parents arriving to collect their children. Eliza hugged each student goodbye, already so invested in their progress, their lives. When the last child left, she looked up and spotted them watching. Her smile could have powered Manhattan. "Mr. Lambert," she greeted Philip warmly, crossing the garden. "I didn't know you were coming by today. I wanted to see this program of yours in action." His eyes held genuine approval. "Very impressive." "Thank you." She slipped her hand into Adrian's, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "Will you stay for dinner? We're celebrating tonight." Philip raised an eyebrow. "Oh? 6-month anniversary," Adrian explained, then caught the look in Eliza's eyes. "Unless there's something else?" Her smile turned mysterious. "Maybe we should go inside first." In their newly renovated kitchen, Eliza poured wine for Philip but declined a glass for herself. Adrian's heart started racing. "Eliza?" She pulled an envelope from her desk drawer, hands trembling slightly. "I was going to wait until tonight. Make it more romantic, but..." She handed it to Adrian. "Open it." Inside was a simple black and white image that changed his world forever. His vision blurred as he stared at the sonogram, at the tiny shape that represented their future. "Is this..." His voice cracked. "Are you 12 weeks?" Her eyes shone with happy tears. "Due in April." Adrian pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. Behind them, he heard his father quietly excuse himself, giving them privacy for this moment. "Are you happy?" Eliza whispered against his chest. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." He pulled back to look at her, framing her face with his hands. "I love you so much." Even though this wasn't in the original business plan, her teasing smile held a hint of old vulnerability. "This is better than any plan." He kissed her softly. "This is real." Later that night, after his father left and they'd called her sister with the news, they lay tangled together in their bed. Adrian's hand rested protectively over Eliza's still flat stomach, his mind racing with beautiful possibilities. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, playing with his fingers. "Everything." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "How far we've come. How much has changed. How terrified I was of letting anyone close, and now I can't imagine my life without you in it." She rolled over to face him. Do you ever regret it? The arranged marriage? Never. His voice was firm. It brought me to you. Everything else, all the complications and revelations and growth, it was worth it because it led us here. Here being, in love, starting a family, building something real together. He traced her jaw with gentle fingers. I spent my whole life chasing perfection. And then you taught me that the most perfect things are often the messiest, the most unexpected. Like falling in love with your arranged wife? Like letting that arranged wife see every broken, vulnerable piece of me and love me anyway. He kissed her softly. Like learning that strength isn't about control, it's about being brave enough to let someone in. My brave, beautiful husband. She touched his face tenderly. Who finally learned that love isn't a weakness. Because of you. He covered her hand with his. You made me want to be more than my father's son, more than the perfect CEO. You made me want to be just Adrian, just a man in love with an incredible woman. And now? Her eyes sparkled with joy. What do you want to be? Yours, he said simply. Your husband, our baby's father, your partner in everything. No more business arrangements or corporate masks. Just us, building our life together. I love you, she whispered, curling closer. Every version of you. The controlled CEO, the vulnerable lover, the excited father-to-be, but especially this version right now who isn't afraid to be real with me. Adrian pulled her closer, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms. Outside, the city hummed with life, but in their bedroom, in their home, everything was peaceful. Perfect in its imperfection. What do you think it'll be? He murmured, hand returning to her stomach. Boy or girl? Does it matter? Not at all. He smiled against her hair. As long as they have your heart. And your strength. And hopefully neither of our stubbornness. She laughed softly. I think that ship has sailed. With our combined genes, this child is going to be wonderfully, perfectly stubborn. Poor kid, he chuckled, born into a family of strong-willed overachievers. But also born into love, she reminded him. Real, messy, beautiful love. The best kind, he agreed. They fell silent, listening to the quiet sounds of their home, feeling the promise of their future pulse between them. So much had changed since that first meeting at the altar. Two strangers bound by business and obligation, each carrying their own secrets and fears. Now, 6 months later, they were building something neither of them had dared to dream of. A real marriage, a growing family, a life filled with purpose and passion and love. It wasn't the perfect merger their fathers had planned. It was better. It was real. And as Adrian drifted off to sleep with his wife in his arms and their child growing beneath his hand, he finally understood. Sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from letting go of perfection and embracing the messy, complicated, wonderful reality of love. They were Adrian and Eliza Lambert, no longer bound by business, but by choice, by trust, by love. And that was the most perfect arrangement of all. If you found yourself in an arranged marriage like Adrian and Eliza's, would you choose to maintain the perfect facade of control, or risk everything by showing your true self? What would you be most afraid to reveal to someone who started as a stranger, but could become the love of your life? Perfect arrangement. Leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below, letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.